What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here with another NFL division preview for the 2020 NFL season. In this video, I'm going to break down the AFC South, the division that I feel every single season, no matter what, I always get wrong. I don't know what it is. I don't know how, I don't know why, but I just always seem to get it wrong, bro. I really don't know why. I could pick any team in this division every single year, but it just seems like every single year I get it wrong. And sorry guys, I do not have an AFC South jersey, but I just got this one, Dan Marino. So for you Dolphin fans here in the chat, I just got that today, literally like 2 hours ago. It's also my birthday today. So no better way to spend your birthday than talking about the NFL, the upcoming NFL season. And in this video, we are going to discuss the AFC South. Later on today, also, I will be live to discuss the AFC West, finishing the division previews for the AFC. And then tomorrow, we're going to move on to the NFC. I hope you guys are enjoying these division previews. If you are, make sure you give this a thumbs up. Make sure you comment your thoughts on the previews. Give me your record predictions and anything you have, little bits and pieces of information about the NFL this year that you think are interesting. So let's kick off the AFC South previews with a team that I think everybody, like consensus, has at the bottom of the division, at the very bottom. And again, guys, this is the worst division. Historically, I am terrible at predicting this division. So listen to what I say, not necessarily who I pick. I think that's a very smart thing to do when it comes to this division. So let's start off. Oh, and before we start off, I can't go without saying, Gronk, spike the like button and subscribe to the Bottom Line View if you haven't already for more NFL previews just like this. And as I just said, comment your opinion on this division. We are live, so after the end of every team, after I preview each and every team, I want to hear from you guys in the live chat. What are your predictions for that team individually? Give me your ceiling prediction for that team. Give me your floor prediction. Give me your real prediction, how you think it's going to go for that team. So shout out to Connor. He says, happy birthday with $12, bro. Connor has been the MVP of this 2020 NFL season, and it hasn't even kicked off yet. It hasn't even started. Thank you, Connor. He says, happy birthday with the $12 super chat. Salute to you. I appreciate you, bro. All right. So let's kick it off with the Jacksonville Jags. All right. So the Jags, as you can see, I'm with consensus. I'm not going to go crazy here. I'm not going to go insane, all right? I'm sticking with the fourth last place finish for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm also giving them the 29th offense and the 29th defense. I think they will end up with the number one pick in the NFL draft, and I think that's where we should start. Also, a super chat from Party. Appreciate it, Party 199. He gives me, go Colts. Happy birthday. All right, this is AFC South. This is made for Party. Listen to what I have to say later on. We're going to be talking Colts. I believe Colts are going to be the last team I'm talking about, and it's for a reason. So let's start off with the number 4 team, the Jacksonville Jags. So I feel the Jags need to have a tank season because I think there's been far too many seasons where the Jags have been a middle-of-the-road team. They've been, trying to compete when they really weren't in a position to compete. There was a period of time there where they were trying to push Blake Bortles down our throats and basically saying this was the guy when everybody watching the NFL knew this was not the guy. I mean, we knew Blake Bortles. I called him the 70 whatever best quarterback in the NFL. People were saying how terrible he was. The only organization, only people, analyzing the NFL that didn't think Blake Bortles was terrible was the organization themselves. I mean, they needed to get rid of him quicker than they did. And I think that, therefore, has put the Jags behind the 8 ball and has put them in the current position they're in right now. rebuilding. That's basically what he did for them. Yes, they went to the AFC Championship in one season, but I think without Blake Bortles, without the worst starting quarterback that season in the NFL, they go to the Super Bowl, they win the Super Bowl. I think you could have just started any other starter that year for that team. It doesn't matter who it was, and they probably would have won the Super Bowl because he was that bad. All right, enough of the Blake Bortles stuff. It's been a while since I've talked about good old Blake Bortles, but Jacksonville, all right? I do think they have a lot of young, promising talent. And I've said many times this offseason, I think the Jags are that team that finishes at the bottom of a division that I feel, within a season or two off seasons, they actually could quickly turn it around. I don't think it would take a ton. I don't think it would take a lot for this team to turn it around. I think maybe you get a high pick, you pick your future quarterback, if that's not Gardner Minshew, which we'll discuss. Or maybe you add an impact player to the secondary, or you add a big offensive lineman or a big playmaker. Either way, I think Jacksonville is just 2 to 3 players away, like big impact players, to actually being competitive. Because I understand they've been getting rid of, they traded Calais Campbell. Talvin Smith quit on them, basically. That's what I'm going to call it. They just traded Ronnie Harrison. They traded AJ Bouye. They traded Jalen Ramsey. But they got picks back for them. I actually thought that the Jalen Ramsey trade was a fantastic trade for them. Actually, they got very good value for him. Calais Campbell, not so much, but they got the best play out of him of his entire career, so you got to give him that. What else? Offensively, DJ Chark came into his own last season, and going forward, we'll see if he can keep that up. But overall for Jacksonville, I just think this is a team that's young. They're going to see and test the waters with what they have. And with all these moves they've made, they're trying to see what they have in these young talents. I mean, outside of really Chris Thompson at running back, who will probably play a role, and Tyler Eifert at tight end, I mean, they don't really have any older players that are in prime position. So basically their entire starting core are made up of younger, promising guys. So let's start with the offense and a depth chart that I look at and I say, their record, them as a team will be worse than the actual players they have. I think the problem with the Jags is, like I said, they don't have any superstars that actually can make big time plays. They just have a lot of good players. Or solid players. I actually don't think this team, or this roster, I should say, is as bad as people think. But then again, when we get to my record prediction, they're probably going to be a bad team. So let's start off with the offense. You got D.D. Westbrook, DJ Chark, and Chris Conley at receiver. You also throw in Keelan Cole as well, and a couple other guys. I do think their receiving core is actually kind of underrated. I like D.D. Westbrook. I want to see what he can do in this season. I think DJ Chark's one of the best young receivers in the game, and they should pay him as that. Chris Conley is not a bad number 3 or number 4 option on a lot of offenses. I think he would be a number 3 in basically every offense in the league outside of a few. But I do think D.D. Westbrook is a guy that's being slept on this year, because last year he had high expectations. He kind of let us down, but he could be a post-hype sleeper. You look at their offensive line, and this is really where I struggle with their offense. I think their tackle position, they've just not hit on their picks. I think Cam Robinson, Jawan Taylor, these guys have struggled in pass protection. Run blocking wise, they're not terrible, but I just feel like those tackle positions have not worked out. They've spent high capital on those players. I think both were high second round picks, and neither have really panned out. So they're going to have to replace those guys rather quickly or figure out something to do with those guys. Andrew Norwell, they signed to a big contract a couple seasons ago, really hasn't hit the way that they thought he would. He was fantastic in Carolina. They give him this big contract. He hasn't really played to his contract, but he hasn't been terrible. Brandon Linder is their best offensive player, in my opinion, although a lot of NFL fans do not know who he is. Can is below average. Gardner Minshew, I like parts of and aspects of his game, but I don't love any aspects to his game. Tyler Eifert is over the hill. He's kind of run down, but he isn't terrible. There's worse tight ends in the league than Tyler Eifert. Thompson's definitely the worst starter going into the season after letting go of Leonard Fournette. And I will say this, letting go of Leonard Fournette was an interesting decision. You still had 1 year on his deal. Obviously, Jacksonville knew that they were going to get rid of him. They weren't going to sign him long term. So I understand why they let him go. But at the same time, like, if you were intending to see what you have in Minshew, I don't really love that Jacksonville has put Gardner Minshew in such a terrible position. I mean, the guy really doesn't have a lot around him outside of those receivers, like I discussed. The offensive line is one of the worst in the league. I would say it's probably bottom 5, bottom 7. The running game is going to be the worst at the running back position. So he can't lean on those guys like he could with Leonard Fournette. Yes, he has Chark there, who he's grown a rapport with. Yes, I like Connolly and Westbrook. But I mean, and he has a new coordinator, Jay Gruden. I should bring that up. I think their passing game, they're going to be a more pass-heavy team. Obviously, I think that's part of the reason they let go of Fournette. And another, honestly, this is the biggest reason they let go of Leonard Fournette. Fournette honestly would help them win games. And I think Jacksonville's at the point of where they're tanking. I think they've made it, no bones about it. They're tanking 100%. And if you don't think they're tanking, you're just not. Open your eyes, bro. Look at all the moves they've made. Yes, they've made some nice moves, specifically in the draft. I love their draft this year. But their free agency moves have suggested they are tanking. And the releases, the trades, I mean, especially for the capital they've gained for those players, like, I don't know. I think most teams that are trying to compete don't just release Leonard Fournette for nothing. Like, that's just me. So, yeah. Jacksonville, offensively, they'll be exciting. I think actually Minshew is a good fantasy late round target, especially in 2 quarterback leagues. DJ Chark is a nice target, in my opinion, because he'll get a lot of receptions. And even maybe D.D. Westbrook's a sneaky target there. Now, defensively, I actually like a lot of their pieces. I mean, the one that stands out here is their linebacker position. Miles Jack, they signed Joe Schobert, who, as you can see, I rank as the number 12 linebacker. I think has been super underrated, especially when it comes to his coverage ability. He has great range. He almost plays like a safety in coverage. He's very instinctive. He's very intelligent. I think he's going to help Miles Jack a ton because now Miles Jack can play more of his traditional role and position. Jack is very athletic, but he has struggled as of late to play to his capability. Maybe he bounces back this year back into the top 15, top 10 discussion. Their defensive line, Taven Bryan, I am looking for a big year this year. He played well in a rotation kind of role last year. Now he's going to be asked to be their best interior lineman. Josh Allen is really good, really promising. And now he's going to be asked to do it without Calais Campbell and Yannick Ngakoue. So can he come through there? Kayvon Chason, I was a huge fan of in the draft. I think he will start. I think Smoot and him will kind of split reps. And then you have the nickel position. DJ Hayden is one of the better nickel players in the league, the number 5 for me. Really good last year, especially in this scheme. And they're still playing that kind of Seattle-based scheme, the cover 3 press bail. CJ Henderson, I actually ranked higher than Jeffrey Okudah or Jeff Okudah in the draft. And I think he's having a better camp. I thought he was the better pure shutdown cornerback. I know a lot of people will disagree with that, but that's just the way I felt. And I think the Jags got a steal there where they picked him. Herndon is actually really, really promising and underrated. A lot of people don't know about him, but just go and check the stats. They have the worst strong safety in the league after trading Harrison. Free safety, Gerard Wilson is not terrible. So, yeah, the defense is probably better than people think, even though I've ranked it so low. I think the reason I've ranked it low, as you can see, 29th, is I don't think they have like a lot of studs in important positions yet. If CJ Henderson becomes the next Jalen Ramsey, then I'm wrong there, and then, he's a shutdown corner, right? Or if Josh Allen takes the next step into top 15-ville, then maybe they're better defense than I expect. But I think a big thing for me is just coaching on both sides of the ball. If I was more compelled by their coaching, if I liked their scheme more, like defensively and offensively, I'd probably be behind it more because in years past, I've been high on the Jags and they've let me down because of the coaching. I'm not a fan of Doug Marrone. I'm not a fan of the way that he coaches his team situationally, and I do think he needs to go. I'm just going to be honest. I know there are fans of Doug Marrone. I'm not one of them. So at the end of the day here, guys, just to sum it up, I think the Jags have a lot of talent that in 2 years they could turn this team around very quickly. But the biggest question is, how does Minshew look with limited talent around him? If he can prove to be good this year with not much around him, then he's your guy. If not, then hey, draft somebody. You're going to have a top 5 pick. So the record prediction for the Jacksonville Jags, it's going to look ugly, but I promise you they're going to be more fun than the record suggests. I have 2-14. So I have 2-14, partly because I think they're going to be on purposely, putting out rosters and lineups that I think is not made to win. Like, they're trying to get a high pick. They're on purposely doing this. Their ceiling is a 6-10 team. I think that's if Minshew improves. I think that's if some of these young defensive players really play well. Their floor is 1-15. I'm not going to say any team will ever go 0-16. I'm just not ever going to say that. I honestly don't see them going 0-16 at all. They just have too much young talent. And I do think they're a team that's going to be hungry. And I do think they're a team that could potentially surprise, like if Minshew continues to progress. So Jacksonville 2-14, last in the division. Let me know your predictions for the Jacksonville Jags right now in the comments. Kareem has 3-13. Let me know, guys, what you think. Joseph says 7-9 at ceiling. I'm intrigued to hear what Party thinks about the Jags because he is an AFC South fan. I'm also intrigued to hear what Mr. Nicholas Gill has to say because he always has a crazy take. So let me know, guys, what you think. But if you haven't already, if you're just joining me here live, make sure you do Gronk Spike the like button. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe to the Bottom Line View. I cover every NFL team just like I just did for the Jags. So make sure you do subscribe to the channel. All right. What do we got here? Kevin Durcan has 2-14. Turtle has 3-13. Harris has 2-14. The Roaring Riot has 3-13. GSP has 0-16. 0-16, bro. Deshaun says 4-12 or a 6-11 record. I don't think that's I think that's impossible, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just mathematically incorrect. Nicholas says 4-12 for the Jags. Kareem says, I think they can steal a couple of games. Joseph says 1-15. Jags 6-10. Party says 3-13 for the Jags. I think they have a good future, to be honest, with some good players. They're looking forward to 2021. Yeah, I think a lot is going to go into how they do in the draft. Oh, last thing to say about Jacksonville. Big deal here. They need to get rid of Caldwell. I mean, the guy cannot draft. Okay? Get rid of him. Please. Do it. All right? I understand you had a good draft, in my opinion, this year. But you picked Leonard Fournette over Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. Bro, come on. Get rid of the guy. Please. All right, let's get to the next team. Yeah, I don't know how that guy still has a job. Like, seriously. And I'm not trying to hate on the man. This is all about my analysis on the team. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm just saying. I don't know how you have a... Like, serious, how do you have a job still, bro? Like, this guy is a magician. I think Michael Lombardi calls him David Blaine Caldwell. Bro, how? All right. Anyways. Let's get to the next one. The Texans. All right. The Houston Texans. I have finishing third in the AFC South. I have spent a lot of time thinking about this and where I would rank the Texans. I could see the Texans finishing anywhere from first in the division to third in the division. I could see them having a top 3 seed in the AFC. But ultimately, I think they have the least amount of depth in the division, which is concerning for the 2020 NFL season. I think the Texans have the worst defense in the division. And I think they're way too reliant on 2 or 3 players. I also am not a fan of the health of these players. Like, a lot of the players they have on their team are very injury riddled. JJ Watt, Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, Randall Cobb, even kind of Deshaun Watson, David Johnson. If you lose Laramie Tunzel for any amount of time, that is going to be a huge lot. They just do not have any depth. I do think Bill O'Brien's a better coach than he gets credit for. I actually do believe that. And a better offensive coach than he gets credit for. He has been since he was in New England. He did good things there, and he's done good things with the Texans. I mean, come on, guys. He took Brock Osweiler to the dang playoffs, okay? Give the man credit. I understand from a general managing standpoint, he has not made the smartest moves. But can we at least see it on the field before we judge it, okay? I know a lot of Texans fans are angry at Bill O'Brien for the moves, for trading DeAndre Hopkins. Can we at least be able to watch it before we judge it, okay? That's what I would say. But let's look. I can't really say anything without looking at the rosters. So let's look at the rosters. But as you can see, I do believe they'll have a top 10 offense. They'll be very electric. They'll be very explosive. Defensively, though, I think they are going to be dreadful. So let's look at it. So their offense, their receivers, I think are very good. I love their quadruple combination, I guess you could say. Their quad combo. They got Will Fuller, who I'm very high on this year. I think he could have his best season of his career in a number 1 receiver role. I think he could have over 1,000 if he stays healthy, right? And the problem here is you got 3 starting receivers that are all injury prone, and I could easily see all getting hurt, okay? Brandon Cooks has a long history of concussions. Randall Cobb has a long history of just injuries in general. Will Fuller is a top number 1 receiver. That's why I have him at number 31. Brandon Cooks at number 36. I think he's an upper echelon number 2 now. He's fallen from his days with the Saints and the Patriots, I think, and even early with the Rams last year. He wasn't utilized the same. I think there's a reason for that outside of just, his injuries. Randall Cobb had actually the best year last year he's had in a while, but you got to remember he was on Dallas with Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, and he was having really good matchups, which he should this year, so he's in a good spot. Their offensive line is actually better than people think. I think they all are top 40 at their position, so that has been a big turnaround from what they've done. Titus Howard being probably a top 20, top 15 right tackle now. And then you got Laramie Tunzel, who's a top 10 overall tackle. Martin isn't bad. Fulton and Sharping are better in the run game than the pass game. I think a lot of the sacks go on Deshaun Watson's shoulders, to be honest with you. Watson holds onto the ball a lot, and it's good and bad. David Johnson, yes, I'm very low on him. I don't think he's good. I'm just going to be honest. I don't think he's good anymore. I think he's done. I don't see the explosion. I know he's a good receiver and all that. I think that's the best area that he gives an offense. But now I think he's kind of like Carlos Hyde, like he had last year. And I wouldn't say Carlos Hyde was a top 20 running back last year. And Darren Fells is, one of the worst starting tight ends in the game. He's just not very explosive at all. He's mostly a blocker. And I know they also have, I believe it's Thomas in there as well. But I think Fells will play the majority of the snaps. They also have Kenny Stills, who I like. So that's their offense. They're a top 10 offense. They're explosive. I think their running game will be fine. I do like that they use creativity with Deshaun Watson in their running game. Their passing game will be a lot of deep stuff. I do think Randall Cobb will see the same role DeAndre Hopkins saw last year. I know it's kind of weird to say, but Hopkins was more of an intermediate and short receiver last year. I think Cobb will take over that spot. Fuller and Cook stretching the field, intermediate and deep down the field. And Deshaun Watson, one of the best quarterbacks in the game, one of the best at overcoming the odds. One of the reasons I'm scared to say the Texans will only be third in the division. He is the reason, to be honest with you, because he can overcome a lot of deficiency. And that's one of those guys that I don't like picking against, but I just got to give you my honest truth on how I feel about the team. So defensively, this is where I have issues. All right, so defensively, they lost a couple of pieces. They lost, most importantly, DJ Reader. DJ Reader is a top 20 interior defensive lineman. He is probably the best interior run-stuffing lineman. So I think the Texans are going to be quite a bit worse versus the run because they lose that double-team guy, right? But they're high on Dunn, who is going to be like their nose tackle. Blacklock, they drafted in the second round. J.J. Watt, if he can stay healthy, he's still elite. He's still fantastic. But they're too reliant on him because teams are going to double team him, and Whitney Merciless isn't what he used to be. I just don't think he is. His numbers might be a little deceiving because he plays every snap. But again, injuries are going to hit this team, especially when these guys are so injury-riddled. Roby, in my opinion, is their best corner. Connolly had his best season last year with the Texans, but I'm still not willing to put him in the top 30, area. He's like a good number 2, I would say, or like a decent number 2. Let's say a decent number 2. And he is an improvement from what they've had in the past. Lonnie Johnson, this is the area that I don't really know because they also have Hargraves, I believe, but I'm not really sure who's going to play nickel. If Johnson is going to play nickel, if Roby is going to play nickel. I don't see Connolly because that's not really his skill set. But yeah, Roby impressed me a lot last year because he was covering a lot of the number 1 receivers and just, I think, has been underrated kind of his entire career. They do have a really good linebacker combination, but I will say McKinney is very bad at covering anything, basically. He's not a good cover guy. Cunningham, they just paid a contract to, well-deserved. Eric Murray is one of the worst strong safeties in the game. No matter who they start there, they're kind of deficient there. They're pretty bad there. Justin Reed is really good, really slept on. But the main problem here is not what you see on the screen. The main problem here is their depth. They don't have basically any depth on the defensive line. They really don't have a lot of linebacker depth behind their main 2 guys. I mean, anywhere you look defensively, their depth just isn't good. And I'm worried about that in this season. I'm worried about the 2020 season in terms of that. So they could have their games. They'll have their games, but I don't really see this defense being consistent. And I think that's going to mean that they're going to be a team that is constantly having to win shootouts. And I just don't think you can do that. I just don't, especially looking at their schedule. And I did mention a couple people are commenting now, Jakob Martin, Aminihu, these guys are decent players. I agree with you. So, yeah, I agree with you. But I mean, you got to compare it to every roster. Fans have their opinion about their own team that's often higher. But if you don't know every other team and where other players stand, you can't really judge it, right? There's way better depth on other teams than I feel on the Texans. Just because a guy plays a lot of snaps doesn't necessarily mean he's good, right? I don't know. Aminihu's okay. Martin had his moments. Maybe they're better this year. This is just my opinion. So when you look at their schedule, they're not going to have a cupcake schedule this year like they did last year. When you look at their schedule, I actually want to pull this up for you guys because I think I need to give a reason behind this because I feel I need to, because the Texans are a team, they went to the playoffs, they were up against the Chiefs, the Super Bowl champs. So I do need to take a look at this piece by piece, game by game kind of thing. So they play the Chiefs week 1. Okay, just look at their first 5 games. And this tells a lot about a team. They play the Chiefs in Kansas City on the opener. That is an L, okay? They play the Ravens the next week, who they lost by 40 points to last year, I think. They play the Steelers in Pittsburgh, one of the best defenses in the league. I think the Steelers will beat them. The Vikings, okay, that's a winnable game, but that's not easy at all. The Vikings were a playoff team last year. That's their first 4 games. They played the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Vikings. Okay, then you get a break. You play Jacksonville at home. Then you travel on the road to Tennessee, who is a better team than you last year. I know that they didn't win the division, but that was mostly because Tannehill didn't start. They play the Packers. That's a challenging matchup because your defense, your secondary has to play Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, okay? And the Packers have a good pass rush, an athletic front, and a good secondary. You play the Browns, who are a really talented team. You play New England. You play Indy twice. You play Matt Stafford, Marvin Jones, Kenny Golladay, TJ Hawkinson. All those targets, that passing game that you're going to struggle. You play even like Cincinnati has a really good group of receivers that you got to contend with. You should win that game, but I'm just saying. So this is a way worse schedule than you had last year. You had a cupcake schedule last year, Texans fans. And I'm just giving you the reason behind why I feel about the Texans the way I do. So that is a big reason, is the schedule. It's not necessarily the talent. It's not necessarily anything to do with the coaching or the quarterback. It's just the schedule is so tough that I think it's going to be challenging for them to overcome, given their defense, given that they're a one-dimensional team. So let me give you their record. I have the Texans going 8-8. So regressing, I believe, 2 games, going 8-8. Their ceiling is 11-5. They'll make the playoffs at their ceiling and win the division. That is their ceiling. Their floor is 6-10 because I believe you could see J.J. Watt get hurt. That definitely could happen. And, Will Fuller and those guys. If those guys are down for whatever reason, and you could also get off to a slow start given the chemistry with all the new pieces offensively. So that would be the floor. That would be the ceiling and the record for me personally. I was deciding between 7-9 and 6-10 for the floor, but that's kind of how I see it. So, yeah, I'm sorry to be so harsh on the Texans, but I do feel I kind of need to be to back up my points. So it's not that I don't like the team. I will be watching the team a lot because I think they're exciting. I gotta make my predictions. That's just the way I feel. All right. So let's go to the Texans. And again, I'm always wrong about this division. So there you go for Texans fans out there. Leave your predictions. GSP has 8-8. Opium has 7-9. You know what? I think the Texans should trade the Patriots one of their receivers. That would be very nice of them. Let's do that. Give us Will Fuller. We'll take him. By the way, did you guys see Cam Newton's press conference today? He was all smiley and stuff, like saying, like, you wait and see what we have for you in week 1. I'm excited for Cam Newton in week 1. Michael says 7-9. Nicholas has 10-6. Okay, there's a positive one. Ultra says Houston sweeps Jacksonville and splits with Tennessee and Indianapolis. They lose at Kansas City versus Baltimore, at Pittsburgh, at Cleveland versus New England. Their ceiling is 11-5, floor is 7-9. They finish 9-7, second in the division and 8th in the AFC, just missing the playoffs. Roaring Riot says I got the Texans finishing 3rd in the AFC South with a 9-7 record and missing the playoffs. Harris says, dude, the Texans have a worse defense than the Jags? Yeah, I think they do. I think they have a worse secondary. At least corner position, and I think they have I guess their front 7 is pretty similar, but I do think that the Jags have more depth up front, and I do think, Joe Schobert is going to add a lot to their linebacking position. Here's the thing. The Jags have athletic linebackers. The Texans don't. I lean towards teams that are better versus the passing game, and I'm a big fan of Caleb on Chason, so I think he's going to come in. I do think the Jags are just generally underrated. Their players are generally underrated because they're the Jags. Nobody watches them play. I do think it's slightly better. I think I have them 1 spot higher. So, it's not really a lot, but that's just me. Texans 8-8, says Connor. 4-12, floor, and 4-12. That's too much. 12-4 if the injuries are off. So if you're playing Madden, 12-4. Texans are going 8-8. Party says 9-7 for Houston. Dakota says, here's the real problem with the Texans. Bill O'Brien is a hack. He's a terrible coach. I don't agree with that take. Who was carried by an amazing offensive talent, and last year's divisional matchup against Chiefs proved it. I just think the Texans defense let them down. I'm going to be honest with you. Too slow. Imagine thinking the Pats will beat the Texans. Laugh my ass off, says Kevin Durkant. Okay. Harris says 11-5. Joseph says 9-7. Sports Star says 9-7. So a lot of 9-7s, 8-8s, 10-6s. That seems about right. Mitch, you should start for Chicago at quarterback. Yeah, probably not. I would say if I had a weakness, it's probably my arm strength. I'm more like, what is it? Who's a guy with no arm strength? I'm more like Tim Tebow with my arm strength out there. Durkant, you got to see it for yourself. Yeah, a lot of 9-7s, a lot of 8-8s. Do you guys really think the Texans can make the playoffs after trading arguably the best receiver to the Cardinals? I will say this, Dakota. Receivers don't often, mean wins. I mean, it's nice to have, but it's not always a big deal. And I will say, this is something I say positively. I think the Texans have the potential to be a better offense without him because of the additions they've made and because I think it will make Watson a better quarterback. All right. Anyways, let's get to the next team. That is the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans I have finishing second in the AFC South. They finished second last year behind the Texans. Their offense I have ranked in the top 15. The problem I have with the Titans offense is I do think in terms of a consistency, they'll be a little up and down. But I think they're very explosive. Like Derrick Henry can break a run at any time. Tannehill was a great deep ball passer last year. They have speed at receiver. A.J. Brown is great after the catch. Corey Davis is very, very streaky. Their offensive line is very solid. It's probably the second best in this division. Them and Houston are pretty close. But I do think even without Conklin, they're probably the second best with Jones at center and Saffold at left guard and Lewan at left tackle. Very good, especially left side. Kelly at right tackle. Replacing Conklin isn't terrible. They paid him a decent amount of money. Their defense, though, I think is going to say big-time regression unless they sign Jadeveon Clowney. If they sign Jadeveon Clowney, that's going to change the way I look at this defense because I think the main issue I have with this defense is their speed and is their pass rush. I also think they're going to see some regression from some of their cornerbacks who have played well in the past, but I don't think are necessarily going to be as good now. They're old at that spot too. I think Butler, is regressing, although he's hurt last year, so he's coming back. But I think he's regressing because he's just getting older. Jonathan Joseph is old. I mean, they need Christian Fulton to come in there and play. Kenny Vaccaro played maybe the best I've seen him play last year. He was really underrated last year. And they lost Jarrell Casey, who's a big-time playmaker. But I do like some of their players. We'll get to that. But let's start off with the offense, which I think is underrated. And I think the biggest reason they're underrated is because of their offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, who I think is the most underrated coordinator in the league. He does a lot of really good things. And I think, I messed up Jonnu Smith's ranking. My bad. He's not number 2. Although I wish I put him at number 2. He's not number 2. He's somewhere around like number 14, something like that. But he's in the top like 15 or 16, but he's not number 2. So don't look at that. But everything else is correct. So Roger Saffold, I think top 10 guard. Jones is a borderline top 10 center. Taylor Lewan's a top 10 tackle, especially in the run game. You could argue he's the best in the league. Corey Davis, I like some of his performances. Like he stands out with big time games, but then other times he's completely irrelevant. Adam Humphries, he just wasn't involved last year. Maybe they'll have Khalif Raymond in there more often. Like they use him more as a one-trick pony downfield receiver. I believe his first name's Khalif. Adam Humphries. Yeah, let's just stick with Jonnu Smith at number 2. Let's just stick him there. Adam Humphries at number 86. Yeah, he's probably one of the worst number 3s just because like they paid him. They didn't really utilize him. He doesn't seem to fit their fit their offense very well. Tannehill, I think, is a top 20 quarterback. What else? I don't really know. Like, yeah, he's a really good, like, I think he's underrated. Honestly, I think Tannehill's underrated. I think he was underrated with the Titans and with the Dolphins. I think, a lot of his Dolphin lack of success had to do with his coach and had to do with his scheme that didn't really fit him. I think what the Titans have done very well is I think they've done a very good job of fitting Tannehill inside a scheme that fits his skill set. And a lot of times, that's the difference between quarterbacks. And Joseph says, I think the Titans will sign Sanu. Maybe. I don't know how much of an upgrade he would be, considering he couldn't even make New England's receiving corps. But, he would probably not be a terrible, number 4 option. But I do think Raymond adds speed, and Humphries is more the short guy. I don't necessarily think Humphries is bad. I just think they don't use him correctly. That's kind of my take on him. But yeah, Tannehill is a really good fit for what Arthur Smith wants to do. And what that is let's run the rock a lot with Derrick Henry. And they now have Evans behind him instead of Dion Lewis. And let's shoot the ball downfield with Tannehill. And I want to see them actually, this is something I want to see more from them, is use Tannehill's athletic ability. Use his legs. Use his ability to move. I think A.J. Brown will be a top 20 receiver this year. He's not there yet, but I think he'll get there. But the thing with the Titans is I think when they're in a 3rd and long, and you saw this in the playoffs when they struggled, they're not very good at just traditional passing. Like from the shotgun, it's 3rd and 10. There's a lot of teams like this. Like I bring up the Packers, I bring up the Vikings. New England will be like that. The Titans. I think, the Raiders are kind of like that. There's a lot of offenses that are actually quite decent, but they're just not good when you need to pass the ball in a big situation because they don't have those targets to get open, and their quarterback is not exactly the most accurate. I would throw the Bills in there as well. But the Titans, they're really good in what they do well. That's run the ball, that's overpower you, that's play action. But what they're not good at is just, okay, it's 3rd and 10. The team knows you're going to pass. They need to pass. And maybe that's partly on Tannehill. Maybe that's partly on the receivers. They need somebody to break out, whether that's Jonnu Smith, who I believe it will be, or it's Corey Davis. They need somebody to step up and break out. So that's my take on their offense. Now, defensively, this is where they're going to big time regress. Their scheme is going to hurt them. So Dean Pease was their defensive coach last year. I have so much respect for Dean Pease. He's been a fantastic defensive coordinator over the course of his career in Tennessee, in Baltimore, and in New England. Fantastic. He has just a great fundamental understanding of defense. He's a great schemer. He often has a very complex scheme, which fits a lot of the hybrid players that Mike Vrabel and this staff has kind of fit onto this roster with Rashaan Evans, Jayon Brown, Landry. Those guys are fit to play in a Dean Pease defense. Now, I think we'll see Mike Vrabel take a bigger role for this defense this year in terms of the identity of what they're going to be. But I do definitely worry about their pass rush. That's the reason they were eliminated in the playoffs, was they didn't have enough. I think Landry has been slightly overrated by Titans fans because he's been inconsistent. Jonathan Joseph is the number 24th ranked nickel, not the number 24th ranked cornerback. Again, the nickel position is not the same. I ranked it individually. Malcolm Butler, I gave some respect to at 45. I think this is what people don't understand about Malcolm Butler is the reason I have him still at 45, which is a high, I guess it's a decent, a mid-range number 2 cornerback, is he plays a lot of man-to-man. So obviously he's going to give up catches. The Titans are going to give up catches, but he's also going to force a lot of incompletions. That's just the way that Malcolm Butler plays. So he's very aggressive. He's rather going to get burnt or he's going to make a play. But he definitely has regressed. He's getting older. He might regress more this year. Jonathan Joseph, he'll be a role, whether that's, occasionally at safety, outside corner. The problem I have with the Titans is I don't know who's playing nickel. Is it Jonathan Joseph? Is it Adoree Jackson? Is Butler going to slide in there? Is Christian Fulton going to play there? Like, who's playing nickel? Is it Kevin Byard? Like, who is doing that? That's a question I have secondary-wise. But Byard's awesome. He's one of the best. I think Kenny Vaccaro is underrated. I think Rashaan Evans is underrated. He does a lot. He reminds me of a Dante Hightower type player. Jayon Brown is extremely underrated. Just really good range. He doesn't have a weakness to his game. I think Simmons is going to have a big season. He's hopefully their replacement for what they have in terms of, Jarrell Casey in the past. Daquan Jones is a solid player. But they're missing that extra edge guy. Is Vic Beasley going to contribute to this team or not? Are they going to sign Jadeveon Clowney? But I definitely think their weaknesses are they're a little slow, and I think they're a little old in key spots, and I think they are also young in spots, but they're pass rush. I'm just concerned about the pass rush. When you don't have a pass rush and your secondary is fine, it's not great, that's where I'm concerned. Like the Titans, Adoree Jackson, I love Kevin Byard, but like outside of them in the secondary, when they're playing man-to-man or they're even zone, like are those guys going to hold up in coverage long enough for their pass rush to get there or vice versa, right? That's why I see them struggling versus the pass. I think they'll be solid versus the run, but I do think their defense is going to regress, especially with Pease gone. So yeah, the Titans are a solid team. They're borderline good. I think you could see them make the playoffs this year. My prediction for the Titans is, pull it up, 9-7. So the Tennessee Titans finishing once again 9-7, which I feel like is a safe bet because the Titans always finish 9-7. I think that's kind of a joke at this point. I think their ceiling is that they win the division at 11-5. I think 11-5 is going to get the win at the division, guys. And I think their floor is 7-9. That would mean Tannehill regresses. I think that would mean the defense regresses as I predict. And I think that means their offense overall isn't as explosive as it was. But they'll still be like a relevant team, I think, even at their worst. Unless Tannehill gets injured, then obviously that could change, like most quarterbacks getting hurt. But yeah, they're a solid team. I don't see them as a contender. I don't see them as, an upper echelon AFC team. I see them as kind of average. I think they're going to be 8-8. I think they're going to be 9-7. I think they're going to be 7-9. I think they're more complete than the Texans. I think they have better talent than the Texans. And they arguably have better coaching than the Texans. So that's why I have them at 9-7 instead of, the Texans at second. I have the Titans over top them. And I do think the main thing people are sleeping on here is I think Tannehill is actually good. So, and I think he'll prove that this year. So there we go. Titans. Leave your predictions in the comments. Turtle says the Titans might win less games than Cincy. Are you crazy? Turtle? Come on, bro. Opium has 9-7. Zane says no more Brissett. We're going to get to the Colts real quick here. Pretty soon. Zane says Marlon Mack will have a better season than Henry. No chance, because Marlon Mack's not even going to be the starter. Let me see. Joseph says, I think Tennessee will go 12-4, finish second in the division, and the second wild card spot. Bro, all of your predictions are like between 10 wins and 15 wins. How is that even possible? I think Tannehill will play good, and I think Beasley will step up, or they'll get Clowney. You better hope so. Ultra says Titans sweep Jacksonville and split with Houston and Indianapolis. They'll also lose to Denver, Minnesota, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Baltimore, and Detroit. Ceiling is 10-6. Floor is 7-9, third in the division. I will say this. I think the Titans are actually a tough matchup for a lot of teams because I think they do have that smart coaching staff on both sides of the football. And I do think they're very physical, which for a lot of teams, we saw in the playoffs. They matched up well with New England and Baltimore, which isn't really easy to say. So that's why I think I give them the edge over the Texans as well. Isaac says, for me, the Titans are one of the hardest teams to predict. I'm biased, but I think they'll be 10-6 and win the division. But I can see them going 7-9 and disappointing. No, Byard's not the best free safety, but he's certainly in the conversation. Dakota says, I'm not really sold on the Colts being first in the division because of one thing, an old regressing Phillip Rivers. Hey, that's my main issue with the Colts. I agree with that. Sports with AJ says 11-5. Colts, Titans 10-6. Texans 7-9 and Jags 1-15. Harris has 9-7 for the Titans. Kingslayer has 8-8. Titans 12-4 says GSP. Kevin Urquhart says, how is Byard the best free safety? Zane says Titans 6-10. Turtle says the Titans are almost awful. Mr. Singh says the Titans will be 5-11. Not sold on Tannehill. Mr. Roaring Riot has 11-5 at best, at worst 9-7. Colts are going 11-5. Yeah, Mac will be the starter for approximately 60 minutes, and then he'll be replaced by Jonathan Taylor, who's just the better player. I don't understand why Colts fans are so insistent on Marlon Mack. When am I going to do AFC West? Tonight. Probably like 2 hours. Probably less than that, actually. Probably an hour. What else we got? Ultra says D-Mac is better than Byard. So on that note, let's move on to the Colts. As you probably know by now, if you've been watching this video long enough, the Colts I have finishing first in the AFC South. And it's not just me. They are favored by Vegas to win this division, and a lot of smart people are picking the Colts to win the division. I think the main reasons are they upgraded at quarterback. No matter what you think about Phillip Rivers, he is better than Jacoby Brissett. They have the best offensive line in the division. They have the best front seven in the division. They have the best coach, in my opinion. They have the best front office, in my opinion. So in the main areas where you win and you lose football games, they are the best, other than quarterback, which goes to the Texans. But I do think they're the most well-balanced team. I think they're going to be a top 16 offense, but I actually think their defense will be better than their offense, and I think their defense is what's going to surprise people. This is not something that the Colts are typically known for, but I think the Colts defense is going to be their best unit this year. Also, I think super underrated defensive staff, coaching-wise. So that's another thing. And they're very well, their foundation schematically is very good on both sides of the football. That's why I like the Colts. I think the Colts are a really good bet this year. They have the easiest schedule in the NFL. They face a third-place schedule in their own division, which will help them differentiate between the Titans and the Texans. So that's why I have them first. So let's look at their offense first. So their offense, Phillip Rivers, definitely not a top 20 quarterback anymore, but I'll say 21st. By the way, Dakota says best front office. Have you seen how they treated Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck? Well, that's a different front office. T.Y. Hilton, 28th. Yes, I don't think he's the same player. I think they actually lack a lot at receiver, and that's my biggest question mark about this offense is their passing attack. But I am, confident in Frank Reich that he can make some things happen. Jack Doyle's a fine tight end. I don't think he's anything special. But again, when you have this fantastic offensive line where 4 of their players are top 20, top 16 at their positions. I mean, you have the best left guard in the league. You have a top 10 center. You have a top 10 right tackle. You have a top 12 left tackle. Fantastic. Jonathan Taylor could be better than 18th. He could be in the top 10 running backs. That's how much I like him in his talent. He's basically Saquon without the receiving ability. That's what he is. Yeah, but their passing game, I am concerned with. I think T.Y., he's going to have a better season than he did before, but he is very injury prone. I think he'll become more of a short to intermediate receiver this year than he has been in the past, where he's been mostly a deep threat. And I just think a lot of the young guys that have come into this league have surpassed him, like A.J. Brown in Tennessee. I just think he's a more explosive player. Paris Campbell has a lot of potential, a lot of athletic ability, but we haven't seen it yet. Michael Pittman, same thing. I mean, he could be much better than where I have him ranked, but that's just where I have him ranked right now because he's a rookie. So offensively, I think their run game will be very strong. This is going to be a very run-heavy team with Taylor and Marlon Mack. I think Nyheim Hines is a really good receiving back, but he's not much else than that. And I think Frank Reich has one of the top 10 schemes in the game. So offensively, they are pretty decent, but I don't think they're going to be like one of the best offenses in the game. And they're going to be a very ball control offense. Zane says, I have a question. Go ahead, ask your question. Defensively, let's take a look. So defensively, offensively, kind of average, but maybe a little bit above average because of their scheme. I think Rivers will be better than he was with the Chargers. I think that's a big question that many of you have. I think a big reason is because he's going to have the best offensive line he's probably ever had in his career, and he'll get rid of the football quick. He's very good at reading a defense, and he'll be able to do that. I think he's going to trust T.Y. a lot. I think that's why T.Y. is going to be more playing like how Keenan Allen played in L.A. and San Diego. I think he's going to be less downfield because I just don't think Rivers has the arm to launch the ball down the field as much as he used to. I just don't. I'm concerned with his arm strength, but I do think he's still very accurate, and he's very good in terms of his anticipation and just the small things, the quarterback position, the veteran is still good at, and he's better than Jacoby. So defensively, let's take a look. Defensively, Darius Leonard, best linebacker in the game. I don't care what you say, do not at me. DeForest Buckner, really good player. He's going to change this defense. They did not have a player like him last year. All right. Autry, pretty good. They have decent depth behind those guys as well. Justin Houston had a fantastic year that was slept on last year because his team was in playoffs, but he was actually really good, and he's aging gracefully for them. Kamiko Toure might be the most underrated young edge player in the game. I think he's going to have a really breakout season this year. I just can't put him any higher than that where I have him because he hasn't really done much yet. Moore, I think, is one of the best nickels in the game. What else? Rocky Sin, he's fine. Like, nothing special. I think their weakness is at corner, outside corner, specifically Xavier Rhodes. Hopefully can get a little bit closer to what he was in his prime for them. That would be the hope. They're very strong at linebacker. I think they have the strongest linebacking core in the league with Leonard, Walker, and Okereke. Those three guys are awesome. And I wouldn't be surprised if Walker is actually surpassed this year. Their safety position is fine. I think they're both average. As you can see, I think Hooker is good when he plays, but the question is, can he stay healthy? And I know they drafted a kid as well. Is his name Jones? I'm not sure, but he might get on the field in certain situations. So they have decent depth up front. I think it's actually better than decent. And their secondary is the main concern. But their scheme doesn't rely on their secondary so much. Their scheme is more zone coverage. It's more pass rush. And their linebackers cover a lot of space, are very fast, and are very good tacklers. So they're very reliant on their front seven, their linebackers, their pass rush. And that's why I think getting DeForest Buckner was huge for them, because that's going to give them a guy that has to be double teamed, which is going to free up their edge players like Justin Houston and like Toure to get after the quarterback. So I think the Colts are a really good, well-rounded team, and I think they're going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to win this division. And I'm the most confident in the Colts winning this division that I've been since I'll pick the Colts a couple years ago to win this division. So that's the way I feel about the Colts. I just think they're good all around, and I just love their coaching staff. So the Colts are my pick to win this division. Their record is 10-6. I think I could see 11-5. I don't know if I could see, 12-4 is their ceiling. I think that's if Rivers kind of finds a fountain of youth, so to speak, and they get some production out of the receiver position that I'm not anticipating. But that's their ceiling. I don't think their ceiling is number 1 seed. I think their ceiling is like 2 or 3 seed in the AFC. Their record, 10-6. I'm going 10-6 because their record, their schedule is easy, and I think Rivers will be fine, but I don't think he's going to be great. I think they're going to lose some games because certain offenses will have a beat on their defense and be able to score. I think a lot of their games will be ball control offense and solid defense. Floor is 4-12. Now, this is because I think Phillip Rivers could just be straight up terrible. Like, if Phillip Rivers falls off an absolute cliff, they could go 4-12. And that also has to do with, you know, their receivers. T.Y. Hilton gets hurt, which seems to happen every year. Like, a lot of bad things could happen to Colts, but I think it's a lot more probably possible that they're going to be good rather than bad. So that floor is very, very low. I understand that. But I just think it has to do with some of their age, like Justin Houston, Phillip Rivers, T.Y. Hilton at key positions. But if, you know, that's just if the Texans are good and the Titans are good, you know, so it's just a very weird division. And the Colts are a very weird team because of Phillip Rivers. Like, Phillip Rivers is that old quarterback out of Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Big Ben that I think would regress the most. If one of them were to regress, I think it would be Phillip Rivers. So that's why I have them at 4-12. But yeah, maybe that's a little too low considering they still do have Jacoby Brissett. But yeah. All right, so that's the AFC South, guys. Those are my predictions. Colts in first. Second, the Titans. Third, the Texans. Fourth, the Jags. All right. Give me your predictions for the Colts. Calvin says, if Phillip does fall off a cliff and Jacoby is better than 4-12. I guess that's fair. I mean, maybe it should have been like 6-10, but whatever. Mitch, raid hot take hockey since you missed his raid the other night. We'll see. Kevin Urquhart says the Titans aren't good, which I don't know about that. I mean, maybe, maybe not. Floor is 7-9. Ceiling is 12-4, I think somebody said. This man, Joseph, has every team over 12 wins. 14-2, and will be the top seed in the AFC. I like every move they made, and I think some players will bounce back. How many wins are in the NFC, Mr. Joseph? GSP says 12-4 for Tennessee. Houston 8-8, Indy 7-9, Jacksonville 0-16. Ultra has the Colts going 10-6. He says split the division, lose to Cleveland, Detroit, and Oakland. Las Vegas, you meant. Floor is 6-10. Ceiling is 12-4. First in the division, fourth in the AFC. Isaac says Tannehill is good. A lot of people have 10-6, like Durkant. Sports with AJ has 11-5. I almost went 11-5. Ultra says recap of the division. Colts, Texans, Titans can all win the division and all make the playoffs. Jags suck. Yes, true. Bottom line, how many playoff wins for the Colts? Well, you have to tune into my playoff prediction video for that. All right. GSP says Indy 7-9. Zane says 11-5. And Sports Star says 6-10. All right, guys. That is the AFC South. I'll be back in about 45 minutes to preview the AFC West. Probably 45 to an hour. So around 7:30 Eastern time. Expect the AFC West preview. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, Gronk spike the like button. And if you're new, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL just like this. Don't forget to like the video, guys. It helps a lot. And if you don't know, I have a Patreon. You can subscribe for the upcoming NFL 2020 season. Help out the channel. Help out me become a full-time creator. You get exclusive content, $3 a month. Subscribe to that. Also, join the Discord. Join the Bottom Line View community. In the description, you'll see both links if you want to check it out. The Discord is a chat with all Bottom Line View fans talking NFL all the time. Thanks for watching. It's Mitch. Peace.